Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. We've got a critical security alert on our radar today that demands immediate attention if you manage server infrastructure. We're looking at CVE 2026-58046, which is a severe vulnerability found within Plesk environments. Look, if you're an IT or security pro, you already know keeping your control panels secure is completely non-negotiable. So today, we're breaking down exactly what this threat is, how it works, and the precise steps you absolutely need to take to lock your systems down right now. Okay, let's dive into this. Picture this. You're running a server, and you've handed out basic low-level access to a standard customer or a reseller. You probably think your administrative core is locked down tight, right? Well, because of this specific vulnerability, that same low-level user could escalate their privileges and completely own your entire server. It's a terrifying prospect for literally any systems administrator, but fortunately, we have the exact blueprint on how to stop them in their tracks. Here's a quick look at our roadmap for today. First, we'll cover the threat itself, CVE 2026-5846. Second, the mechanics of the exploit. Third, the impact, which is full server compromise. Fourth, the primary fix of upgrading Plesk. And finally, alternative mitigations using the panel.ini file. Let's get to it. All right, Section 1, the threat. CV 2026-58046, which is a blind SQL injection in the XML RPC API. So this vulnerability was discovered and responsibly disclosed by security researcher Aziz Kanani, and it lives specifically within Plesk's XML RPC API. Now, as we know, vulnerabilities exploit weaknesses in computational logic to mess with confidentiality, integrity, or availability. But in this case, that weakness takes the form of a blind SQL injection. To really grasp how severe this is, we have to understand the mechanism. A blind SQL injection means an attacker can execute arbitrary SQL queries against a database. Unlike a standard SQL injection where the attacker might see the results pop up directly on a web page, a blind injection means they don't actually see the direct output. Instead, they essentially play 20 questions with the database. They ask it true or false questions, observing how the application responds, or even how long it takes to respond. Piece by piece, they can reconstruct and read the entire contents of the database. And in this scenario, they're targeting your core Plesk database. Moving right along to Section 2, exploit mechanics. How a low-privileged user actually pulls this off. Now, what's really interesting here is the attack path itself. You know how vulnerabilities are often rated based on the privileges required to execute them? Well, what makes this exploit so incredibly dangerous is that it doesn't require the attacker to be some outside hacker breaking through your firewall. It uses someone who's already inside the building, so to speak. Let's walk through it step by step. Step 1. The attacker authenticates as a low-privileged user. This could just be a basic customer or reseller account on your Plesk server. Step 2. Once inside, they target that Plesk XML RPC API. Step 3, they leverage the flaw to execute those arbitrary SQL queries we just talked about. And finally, Step 4, they read the entire database and grab the administrator credentials. It's literally like a guest who has a basic keycard to the lobby, using a flaw in the building's intercom system to pick the lock to the master security control room. They're just bypassing all your internal barriers. Section 3, impact, full server compromise, going from limited access to total control. Which brings us to the catastrophic consequences of just ignoring this flaw. We are talking about moving from very restricted access to absolute total control of your infrastructure. The official Plesk security advisory doesn't sugarcoat this at all. They state, this may allow reading the entire database contents, including administrator credentials, potentially leading to full server compromise. When an attacker gains full command execution and administrative access, they own the entire machine. They can read sensitive files, pivot to your internal networks, or deploy ransomware. If your database holds customer data, billing information, or proprietary code, all of it is completely exposed. Section 4, primary fix, upgrading Plesk, which is absolutely the most secure path forward. The good news here? We have a clear, definitive way to shut this down. Applying vendor patches is always your best bet, and the team at Plesk has released the updates to close this API loophole permanently. So you need to know exactly where your systems stand. The vulnerable versions include all Plesk installations running a version below 18.0.79.4. That is the danger zone. The patched, secure version that you need to hit is Plesk 18.0.79.4 or anything released after it. If you're running anything older, you are actively exposed to this blind SQL injection right now. And here's exactly how you execute that upgrade.
First, log into your Plesk web interface with your administrator credentials, usually by hitting your server's hostname or IP address on port 8443. Second, navigate to Tools and Settings and click on Updates and Upgrades. Third, install the latest updates, making absolutely sure you reach version 18.0.79.4 or higher. And finally, don't skip this step. Verify it. Go back to Tools and Settings, check under Server Components, and make sure that new version number is actively running.
So a crucial point here, especially for those of you integrating with billing platforms, we have a specific tip sourced straight from the Plesk community. If you are using WHCMS, be aware that an earlier mitigation applied in version 18.0.78 actually introduced strict API version checking. This breaks WHCMS single sign-on to Plesk because WHCMS just doesn't use the latest API version. The solution is super simple though. Don't stop at 18.0.78. Updating directly to 18.0.79 Update 4 resolves this cleanly, as the devs implemented a fix that doesn't rely on that strict API checking, which keeps your integrations perfectly intact. Section 5. Alternative Mitigation, using panel.ini. This is for systems that absolutely cannot immediately patch. Look, we know that in the real world, enterprise environments and legacy servers can't always just be upgraded on a whim. Sometimes you're tied to older OS versions or dealing with compliance freezes. If you absolutely cannot apply the patch today, Plesk gave us some alternative mitigation methods by modifying the server's panel.ini file. Let's look at how to implement these fallbacks. Option 1 is enforcing strict API validation. You'll need to SSH into your server and locate that panel.ini file. Once you're editing it, you need to add a specific section. Create a bracketed section titled API. Right below that, add the setting deprecation error equals on. Make sure you anchor your eyes on that exact syntax. What this does is it blocks deprecated XML API protocol versions that allow the bypassing of input validation, completely preventing the exploitation of this SQL injection. Option 2 is IP access restriction. Again, edit that panel.ini file via SSH, add the API bracketed section, but this time use the setting allowed IPs equals, followed by a comma-separated list of your trusted IP addresses. This locks down the XML API so only authorized machines can even talk to it. But I have to give a huge warning here from Plesk. Disabling or restricting the XML API using this specific method will also affect and restrict your REST API access. So if you have other services relying on the REST API, this option might just break them. Keep that in mind. And this just brilliantly illustrates the constant balance between security and operational functionality, right? Mitigations are temporary band-aids. Patching to version 18.0.79.4 is the actual cure. We've walked through exactly how a low-level user can exploit this XML RPC API to steal your admin creds, and we've given you the exact steps to shut them down. So I want to leave you with one final critical question to ask yourself today. Is your Plesk server secured right now? Don't wait to find out the hard way. Go check your versions, apply those updates, and lock down your infrastructure today. Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer.